Thank you. Yes, my name is Henrik Roppe. I'm the coordinator of the Working Group of Climate Change for World Council of Churches, seconded by Church of Sweden, so I'm based in Sweden. But today, you see, I am in Glasgow for the Conference of Parties for the UNFCCC, the UN Framework Convention for Climate Change. I have been asked to say something about climate justice, and from our Christian or our theological perspective, and on food and what we see is happening right now. Climate change is something that we have known about for some time.
Show to the world the level of risk that we are confronting in all particular levels. It's not just.
Okay, so this conference is number 26 of all the conference of UN on climate change, and the World Council of Churches have attended all of them with a delegation, smaller or bigger. So this is nothing new for us to bring the moral voices, to bring the faith voices to COP, because the COP is about how to negotiate to come to term with climate change, both when it comes to mitigation of greenhouse gases, but also when it comes to the finance for adaptation, and also what is on the table is also loss and damage. How can we have mechanism for those whose livelihoods are destroyed by climate-related catastrophes? So this is a long discussion between different governments. The problem is that the science is there. There is good science, as today we had the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, who have delivered facts over the years, and the last one of the report just come some months ago. And for the first time, they say there is no doubt that humanity is behind the change of the climate system that we see today. There is no discussion about this. So who has to act? It's humanity over the earth who have to really transform the society from a fossil fuel-based society, from a society where the land use must be changed to not contribute to climate greenhouse gases. That is the sort of what is at stake. But it's not only the climate-related catastrophes like drought, like flooding, like disease spreading, and everything, biodiversity is lost. Everything is also related to climate, but we have a very short span of time to do huge transformation to come to terms with climate change, to avoid the most dangerous consequences of climate change. So still, we are not seeing that the emissions are going down. We still wait for the peak of the emissions to start to have them down. And hopefully, with new pledges from different states, we will come under 2 degrees and looking to stay under 1.5 degrees. That is what has been committed in the Paris Agreement. This is supposed to be 5 years after the Paris Agreement, but we are actually 6 years because of the pandemic. And this is the time when the ramp up of ambition should have been done. We see some improvement when it comes to ambition on mitigation. We don't see not much improvement when it comes to finance on adaptation, and we don't see so much of a loss and damage Warsaw mechanism that has been discussed over the years. And I think this is problematic if you don't connect the finance together with the mitigations. So what we see now and what we hope for is that these last days of the COP, of the conference, we hope to see an agreement between different states to have more ambitious mitigation targets, but also to fill the funds for. We have a $100 billion fund that should be operated from 2020, decided in 2009. So that has been a long time since it was decided. And still, this is not up to $100 billion a year. The host the presidency of the COP from UK said in the beginning that maybe we have to look to 2023 before we come up to that $100 billion a year. And I think that is a shame. That is a real shame that you can't provide those funds to finance, because many of the developing countries, their pledges to do mitigations are relying on finance from this adaptation fund. So it's connected finance also with mitigations. From our side, when we talk about climate justice, we have been doing it from World Council of Churches side for many years, and it's good to see that so many others talks about climate justice. We have a march on Saturday going to the streets of Glasgow, when there were the most common things to say, what do you want now? Climate justice, when do we want it now? So climate justice is not just from our side. Everybody that is on board on this have adopted the word. I would say that I see that our mission to be here, it is to bring the voice of those most vulnerable to climate change. Those are most affected. And at this COP, because of COVID, because of restriction after Brexit, it's so hard to bring those voices. So people of faith must bring the voices of the most vulnerable to climate change. And I hope that we do this. And I say it in every meeting I am in, that I am not here as a Nordic person talking about climate change. I have to be here because so many of my friends are not able to be here. And we are a communion of churches all over the world that needed to be here to bring the voice. Just to give you a short example to finish with, there was a scientist who told that one of his 10 insights, this was Johan Rockström from Potsdam Institute, and he told he got 10 new insights on climate, and number 5 of those insights was the just transition, because climate justice also need a transformation and transition, and that have to be just. And he said that the 1% richest of the world, they have to lower their impact by a grade of 30 times. At the same time, 50% of the population of the world, the poorest, can actually increase their impact on climate to get a better life. So just to understand that this we are talking about are very differentiated. It's very much up to the rich people of the world, the rich countries of the world. They have to do the transformation, and it has to be a just transformation that don't leave people behind, that don't leave people in developing countries to stay in where they are. And of course, talking about food is something that must be produced all over the world. And we see that food is something very much relying on weather patterns. With disrupted climate, we will see problems in how we get our food on our table, so to say. And I think also that many countries, especially the rich countries of the world, must change their diets to not have this CO2 emission, heavy CO2 emission from, for example, meat production. That has to be changed. There has to be a new way of getting the food on the table, so to say, that is taking account of what we see when it comes to climate change. What we see, we have to adapt to the climate change that will be there. Anyway, even if we reach 1.5, we see that there are going to be changes in how we live on this earth together. And we want to come as close as we can to 1.5 degrees. And because the higher the temperature will rise, the more problem there will be with food production, the more problem there will be with water, the more problem we lost biodiversity. And on top of that, you see the social conflicts, migration and so on, that will come from this ecosystem crashes that we can see coming if the climate is more and more disrupted and a warmer world. I don't know if this was something that could be helpful for your discussion, but just to bring the voice from the COP, where we are many from different faith traditions, but also from the Christianity, a good ecumenical communion here, to try to raise our voices. But we have to do it together with, we have to do it maybe sometimes in competition with people from the industry, with different interests. So this is a big scene. We're trying to do our best to bring the voices of those most vulnerable, and we try to work for a climate justice and for a just transformation. So I hope that is more or less at least what I was asked to do. So I'm happy to start this and wish you good dialogue in the future, in the coming of this webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Reverend Henrik, live from Glasgow, and it's wonderful that he's able to set the scene. Now, quickly, our Deputy General Secretary, Professor Dr. Isabel Firi, was unfortunately, she is not able to connect up. She is on a holiday, so she was able to send her brief message. She is representing the WCC leadership, and it will be read by Ecological, who is our deputy moderator for this, the co-moderator for the session, and she is one of the youth animators of our youth network. Over to you, Ecological.
Thank you, Dr. Manoj. Let us know the facts, acknowledge responsibility, and act. Let us walk the talk. Dear sisters and brothers, in the context of the COP26, on behalf of the leadership of the World Council of Churches, I welcome you all to this vital forum on climate justice, food, and faith. It is an important moment where colleagues from the midst of the hectic and intensive negotiations and advocacy that are taking place in Glasgow can join with sisters and brothers across the world to discuss about the existential nexus between climate justice and food, and how faith communities can make a difference on the trajectory of history for the survival and flourishing of God's creation. First, let us start by knowing the facts. Since 2015, the world has seen the warmest 6 years in the recorded history. Global temperatures have already risen 1.2 degrees above pre-industrial level, and much of the future of the world as we know it depends on the actions of this generation. The IPCC report says that 1.5 degrees Celsius of global warming, for 1.5 degrees Celsius of global warming, there will be increasing heat waves, longer warm seasons, and shorter cold seasons. At 2 degrees Celsius of global warming, heat extremes would more often reach critical tolerance thresholds for agriculture and health. The last time such warming took place on Earth was 55.5 million years ago, when over a period of 20,000 years, the Earth experienced a 6 degrees Celsius global average temperature rise. This period lasted 200,000 years and changed the face of the Earth, with widespread extinctions in both marine and terrestrial ecosystems. At the current rate of carbon emissions, we are only 140 years away from reaching carbon levels not seen since 56 million years. But the crisis is already here today. As our climate continues to heat up and the impacts of that warming grow more frequent and severe, farmers, fisherfolk, and communities around the world are increasingly challenged. Observed climate change is already affecting food security through increasing temperatures, changing precipitation patterns, and greater frequency of extreme weather events, which have increased 5-fold over the last 50 years. Second, let us acknowledge responsibility. Food and food systems, in turn, are responsible for 1/3 of global anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions. What we eat, what we drink, where we source food from, how we cultivate or rear livestock, how much fertilizers and pesticides we use, how we prevent food and water waste, and the policies that guide and govern our food systems all have a profound influence on bringing about climate justice. Growing our own food, buying from and promoting local agriculture, preserving and protecting biodiversity, increasing the proportion of plant-based foods, all can significantly reduce our carbon footprint. Agriculture receives around 600 billion US dollars per year worldwide in government support, much of it skewed in favor of pollution and industries that benefit from it. Third, let us act and talk the walk and walk the talk. The richest 10% of the global population, comprising about 630 million people, were responsible for about 52% of global emissions over the last 25 years. The future of our planet is at stake. It is vital that all countries fulfill the commitments towards emission reduction and climate finance urgently. While we have to transform our habits, diets, and behaviors to reduce our carbon footprints and the impact we have on the environment, it is imperative that the wealthier societies and countries take responsibility, along with governments, civil society, and faith communities, to urgently prioritize climate information access, sustainable and adaptive food systems, including agroecology, sustainable fisheries, water supply protection as we move forward. It is key for government and international mechanisms to provide public financing and to ensure that all plans are climate resilient. Let us together raise awareness regarding the impact of climate change on food systems, and livelihoods, and regarding the impact of food and food systems on climate change. Let us support and demand negotiations towards developing meaningful guidance to inform climate action in agriculture. Let our faith and our radical hope lead us towards taking personal responsibility and advocating for policy transformation in the domains of climate justice and food. The manner in which we relate with each other, with the environment, and with food can break this vicious downward spiral. Our faith mandates us to do what is just and embrace life with kindness and humility. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ecological. Thank you very much. Now, I would hand over the responsibility of moderating to Siri. Siri is a youth entrepreneur and one of our animators of our youth network, who is based in Madagascar. He is a dynamic young person who is giving leadership along with Ecological for our youth network, the Youth for Life-Giving Food, Agriculture, and Fisheries. Welcome, Siri.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manoj, and good evening, dear participants and speakers. So for this first part, we will have 30 minutes of speaking of presentation from three respective speakers. Allow me to introduce you. The first speaker is Ms. Jasmine Rocco Presi, co-coordinator of Climate Action Network. She has a degree on environmental sciences from the University of Buenos Aires. She is part of the climate policy area at the Environment and Natural Resources Foundation, NGO in Argentina, and she coordinates the agriculture working group at the Climate Action Network. Welcome, Ms. Jasmine. My question for you is, from the perspective of the Climate Action Network Agriculture Working Group, how is the Coronavia Joint Group on Agriculture negotiations work contributing toward developing meaningful guidance to inform climate change action in agriculture? Could you point to specific gains and challenges ahead? Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I hope you hear me well. I'm inside the venue, so I hope there isn't too much background noise. I will, to answer your question, Siri, I will first share my screen so that I can tell you all a little bit about the Coronivia joint work on agriculture. Let me just, I hope you see my screen well, otherwise let me know.
Yes.
So the Coronivia joint work on agriculture is what I've been following in the negotiations here at the UNFCCC for some years now. And I would like first to talk about where agriculture fits within the UNFCCC. And well, it is within Article 2, which states the objective of the convention. And it is said that the level of gas concentrations in the atmosphere, such a level should be achieved within a time frame sufficient to allow ecosystems to adapt naturally to climate change, to ensure that food production is not threatened, and to enable economic development to process in a sustainable manner. So food production is essential within the UNFCCC because it is what allows us to survive in a way. So it is within its objective. Then I would like to talk a little bit about how agriculture has been incorporated slowly within this space of climate change. So from 2006, the SABSA, which is the subsidiary body on technology and science here within the UNFCCC, carried out a series of workshops related to agriculture. And this was the first time. And then in 2011, SABSA incorporated agriculture as an agenda item. Between 2013 and 2016, 5 workshops were carried out under SABSA. And finally, the most important thing that has happened so far, at COP23 in 2017, it was requested both to SABSA and SBI, which is the subsidiary body for implementation, to treat matters related to agriculture in a joint way, which is the Coronivia joint work on agriculture. And this was the first substantive result and the first COP decision on the agriculture agenda item, which is why this space is so important. What is Coronivia then? It is a dialogue space within the UNFCCC established by this decision, this COP decision. And it recognizes the unique potential of agriculture to face climate change, as well as its vulnerabilities to climate change effect. And its work has been established in what we call a roadmap, which contains a series of thematic workshops. Here is the long list of workshops, which you can see were originally 6, but then 2 extra ones were incorporated by suggestion of New Zealand. So you can see that these workshops are very technical, but they cover a lot of topics which are very important for agriculture, such as modalities for implementation, assessing adaptation, soil carbon, soil health, soil fertility, manure management, livestock management systems, socioeconomic and food security dimensions, and of course, water management and other strategies and modalities for implementation. This was like an overview of what Coronivia is, and I know that the time is a constraint, but I just wanted to give you an idea of in what way agriculture is discussed here at UNFCCC. So what has happened now? This year, Coronivia finished its roadmap, which actually was supposed to finish last year, as you might know, because of the pandemic, we didn't have a COP last year. So actually the decision of the COP for Coronivia is for its roadmap to be over by COP26, which happened this year. So all the workshops have been completed. But now at this COP, it was supposed to, the parties were supposed to define on how to continue with Coronivia. What is the next step for Coronivia? Because like I said, its mandate was until COP26. Well, due to time constraints and because parties were not agreeing on the text, that has been postponed until next year. So until next year, we won't know what is the future of Coronavia. And one thing that I think it's important to note is that parties seem to have different views on what Coronavia could do. For example, could Coronavia help advance in climate action in the FOLO sector? Could it help by providing means of implementation? Could it help by providing guidance, for example, to financial entities such as the GCF to better use those funds in projects related to agriculture? Well, those are conversations that are still being carried out now. And like I said, are going to continue next year, because next year is under the African leadership for COP, when Coronavia's future will be decided. And like I said, this is the time when the discussions will finish, and maybe a new roadmap will open with maybe new workshops. So that is to be decided. I'm sorry, I don't have all the answers, but this is an ongoing process. But like I said, this is a party-driven process. So we have to see what the parties in the end want from this space. And that's it, like a very short recap on what Coronavia is.
Yes, thank you so much for that brief introduction and explanation of what Coronavia is. We hope that you will have 1 minute of closing remarks later. You can still add a comment on it. Allow us to welcome our second speaker is Aurélie Ravoivson. She is from Madagascar. She has been the program manager of an association and the active member of Panazava at Madagascar. She, within the project, is leading an activity in the southern part of Madagascar regarding nutrition and climate change. And she is also communication and advocacy officer of Yes Girls Movement Panazava at Madagascar. So my question for you is, our context in southern Madagascar has been lifting up as a climate-induced famine. Can you share how your work is assisting communities to adapt and cope with the situation?
Hello, everyone. Okay, hope you are doing well. So today from this webinar, I'm going to talk and to share with you what is happening in Madagascar now, and down to the climate change, and how our work assisting the communities. Can you share the slide, please? See? Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, climate change is still one of the biggest issues in southern Madagascar. It is important to highlight that Madagascar represents 5% of the global biodiversity in the world, and accept the fact that climate challenges threatens the Malagasy biodiversity, which inevitably lead to the loss of some important fauna and flora. Climate change also affects social, economical, and political life. Talking about social injustice, climate change has bad impact on people's lives and are affecting the population inequality, especially in southern Madagascar. To illustrate this point, the south of Madagascar is one of the most popular cases because of drainage and the lack of rain. Thousands of people are suffering from famine, or what we call kere, and malnutrition. This situation forced the population to abandon their lives in order to migrate to another area to get access to foods and water. For Madagascar, deforestation are mainly caused by the practice of bushfire and the charcoal businesses. The first thing to do is still about sensitization. That's why, as a girl guiding and the initiator of change, the Panazava at Madagascar and Mamel Association collaborate and has its one program, which there to address the measure of climate change and malnutrition. First of all, alongside World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts, we have our one girl-powered nutrition program and project, which aims to sensitize and advocate on the importance of getting access to good nutrition. Also, through the Youth Exchanges Soft-to-Soft program, we are totally working toward climate change and environment through the Green Tech Generation program and have our own plastic turner challenges advocates. Green Tech Generation program consists to planting trees. For the case of the south of Madagascar, we plant a plant called the livelihoods nearest to the beach. This plant products where our challenge is to plant in more than 10,000 trees and livelihoods per year. Plastic Turner challenges. This is a program of capacity building toward plastic. This program aims to recycle plastic and advocates to reduce the use of plastics. And also, suffer in Madagascar first a serious food insecurity. At least 500,000 children under 5 in southern Madagascar are at risk of acute malnutrition, and 110 million of whom are in serious condition. Because of poverty, many people are not able to enjoy good nutrition. Also, the concept of healthy food are still unknown from many of them. Climate change leads to extreme desertification, which decreases the quality and the quantity of the agriculture and its nutrients inside them. And to tackle these issues, we managed to do a sensitization toward healthy food. And moreover, advocates in high level raise awareness on healthy food and also through the Girl Powered Nutrition Program, advocates decision makers to make action on this matter. As partners for the goal 13 and 2, we must sustain the effort made and fighting toward these problems and always support the Ministry of the Nutrition event in southern Madagascar. And we also have an online campaign and activity pack for our age to promote non-formal education toward the issues and at the same time having fun. So we must continue to raise awareness on healthy food through the Girl Powered Nutrition Program in the Southern Africa, Madagascar. Also advocate decision makers to make actions on this matter. So our principal case to this Girl Powered Nutrition is to advocate to access access to healthy food for elder people from the southern Madagascar. And the Green Tech Generation is consistent to plant a trees called livelihoods and livelihoods produce water. So I think that's all. Thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you so much, Aurélie, and keep up the good work in the southern of Madagascar regarding sensitization and awareness and tree planting activities. Now we invite Dr. Million Belay, our third speaker for this first part. Dr. Million Belay coordinates the Alliance for Food Sovereignty for Africa, a network of major networks in Africa. He's a member of the International Panel of Experts on the Sustainable of Food Systems. Dr. Million is a founder of the MELCA Ethiopia, an indigenous NGO working on issues of agroecology, intergenerational learning, advocacy, and livelihood improvement of local and indigenous peoples. My question for Dr. Million is, you have always pointed to agroecology as the most sustainable solution to climate crisis. Can you elaborate on this point and share your advocacy works toward emission reduction and climate finance, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Siri, thank you very much, the World Council of Church, for inviting the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa. The Alliance is the biggest social movement in Africa. Our members work in 50 of the 55 African countries. We have farmers, fisherfolk, pastoralists, indigenous people, faith-based institutions, consumer associations, youth members, women networks as members. We address over 200 million Africans. Thank you very much for this question. As you all know, Africa is basically an agricultural community. Over 80% of, on average, over 70% of the African population lives on agriculture. Agriculture is our life. And close to half of the economy of Africa depends on agriculture. So when we talk about impact of climate, we talk about the impact of climate crisis on agriculture, on the majority of Africans. I think that should be very clear. And there are two kind of directions that are forwarded as a solution to the climate crisis that we are having. The first one we categorize as mainly false solutions, and it focuses on increasing productivity at any cost. Africa's climate crisis is a food shortage. That's what this says. So this view, this paradigm, this direction recommends the application of agrochemicals, high-yielding varieties, reorienting our agriculture into market. That's what is a recommendation for addressing the climate crisis by some actors. Even as I speak, a new initiative, Jasmine can tell you that a new initiative has been launched. This is launched by the UAE, United Arab Emirates, and the Gates Foundation. It's called Aim for Climate, Agricultural Innovation Mission for Climate, Aim for C. And basically, this is productivity and putting technology as a solution to climate crisis. But what we are saying is that we have tested a rapidly developing and contextual and accommodative solution, which we call agroecology. Agroecology is the right direction because as we have seen from our research. By the way, we have done research since 2013 to confirm to ourselves whether agroecology works for Africa or not. The answer is it does. And the meta-analysis that we did from more than hundreds of researches and case studies that we have collected tells us that one, agroecology improves soil. And the soil, as you know, sequesters carbon, the soil's microorganisms, the soil's organisms on ground sequester carbon. Carbon sequestration is very much important, and it's a mitigation strategy. And agroecology is very good for adaptation because it increases productivity, it increases farmers' income, it improves biodiversity, it increases resilience, and it is important for creating social cohesion. Social cohesion is very much important. Cyclone Ida. Cyclone Ida impacted mainly Mozambique, Malawi, and to a larger extent, Zimbabwe. And there was a research done in Zimbabwe to compare between conventional agricultural lands and lands covered with agroecological techniques. And they found out that to a larger extent, lands which were treated under agroecology could manage the impact of Cyclone Ida much better than conventional agriculture. And what they found is agroecology increases social cohesion. People don't talk about social cohesion for adaptation strategies. Social cohesion is very much important. So agroecology increases the...
This is Zimmer from LaGrange, Indiana.
Sorry. There's a sound coming in.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much. So
Okay.
agroecology is important. It increases social cohesion among local communities. And it's also much more important because it addresses the agenda of women. You know, it recognizes the knowledge of our mothers and sisters. So women are central to agroecology. And agroecology is very much important because it recognizes and it enhances the knowledge of farmers. Farmers in Africa have been farming for more than thousands of years. You know, their knowledge is very much important. They know the soil, they know the weather, they know the plants, what kind of plants to plant when there is a problem. They have social structures, social governance structures, which are very much important. So agroecology enhances that. So to conclude, you know, through research, it's not only our research. Agropolis, you know, Agropolis has produced a document quite recently. They went back 10 years and looked at all the research that has been done by CGIAR institutes. And they have found that agroecology works. So the research community is finding out that it works. A lot of governments are saying that it works. And a lot of bodies say that it works. And the church community is a very, very critical community. Currently, we are working under our land and our life projects with a number of churches. We are working with churches now, as an Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa. As I said, we have church members, you know. Fidel here can tell you about that. So we want to work, increase or tighten our relationship with the World Churches Council. And in the future, I hope that we will plan together, we will work for agroecology together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Million Belay, for that inspiring talking about what you are doing and proving that agroecology is really working to adapt for the climate change. Now we have the fourth speaker, and we apologize that he's not able to be among us today, but he recorded a video that we are going to present. The next speaker is Reverend James Bagawan. He is the General Secretary of Pacific Conference of Churches.
Thank you, everyone, and my greetings to you all from Glasgow. I was going to say sunny Glasgow, but the sun just kind of disappeared very quickly. And greetings from outside the blue zone of COP26, where negotiations are taking place, where there is an immense sense of frustration and lack of inclusion from Pacific Island and the Global South in terms of presence, particularly through COVID and other difficulties in getting here. But I'm grateful to be able to step in on behalf of one of my colleagues from the Pacific to join you on this webinar. Let me just quickly share my screen. And I would like to begin by perhaps sharing this, this image. Because when we talk about climate change and food security, we have to remember that prior to the impacts of climate change, we are already seeing our food security affected in the context of massive and unsustainable development. Extractive industries which go to support the global north and more developed countries at the expense of Pacific Islands and other developing countries. And you know, this is both an issue of food security, but also an issue of sovereignty, an issue of keeping us dependent, because now when you have food shortages, you have to depend on aid organizations and the such, and financial mechanisms and support, often in the form of loans to developing countries in order to provide basic necessities for their people, or to help subsidize food and other necessities to communities. At the same time, of course, we're severely affected as people who have a very strong spiritual connection with the land and the sea. So you can imagine what this is doing to our communities. And then, of course, we have the exacerbation of global warming, climate change, the increasing temperature of the Earth's surface, the Earth's oceans, the melting of the polar ice caps, and its effect. For our Pacific, and this is from the Pacific Conference of Churches, a lot of this comes under our pillar 3, which is ecological stewardship and climate justice. We can see from our context, sea level rise, extreme weather, increasing ocean temperatures, and saltwater inundations. On an extreme point, we have the impact results in climate-induced displacement and relocation. We have the extinction of living creatures and living cultures, disappearance of nations in terms of sovereignty, and the whole issue of justice and dignity for people who will need to be relocated. And a lot of that has to do with not only the physical structure of islands or low-lying coastal communities, but in fact, it has to do with food security. You cannot, long before the islands disappear under the rising seas, we will have to relocate people because the homes are no longer safe, but particularly the food security becomes an issue. We already have Kiribati, which has purchased land in Fiji, ostensibly for food security, although how that will work is going to be a challenge, of course. But these impacts on ocean and on land have a direct correlation to food security in our Pacific. We are people who depend on the ocean quite a lot for our sustenance, our fish, even our vegetables, sea grapes and others come from the sea. Our livelihoods depend on the sea. So the impact of the oceans, warming, acidification, has already a marked impact on our food security issues. And then you have things like this, which is really extreme saltwater inundation. These are the floods that are caused from the rising tides, from king tides, etc., into our Pacific. So we're not talking about rising seas in the future. This is an old picture. This is almost, I think, 10 years old now. So you can imagine for how long we have been facing these issues and calling the world's attention to the impacts of climate change. But this image from Kiribati really resonates with me because it talks about the realities. Fresh water, being able to grow crops. This is the future reality for many, but this is already the lived reality for our Pacific Island countries in the context of climate change. And this speaks to the extreme level of poverty that climate-affected countries experience. Where will they get their food imported from? What is the process for that? What is the cost for that? And how does that, in a long term, when you talk about self-determination and the sovereignty of a country, what deals will countries have to make in order to be able to provide for their people? Again, this is just to remind us that the tide is rising, and we in faith communities, in civil society, need to rise with it to ensure accountability for our governments in responding to the climate crisis. This is an example of the aftermath of an extreme weather event. This is after severe tropical cyclone Winston, category 5 cyclone, the largest, strongest cyclone ever to be experienced in the Southern Hemisphere in 2016. And you can see just from this, the basic source of life in the Pacific, if nothing else, is the coconut tree. And you can see the impact of the cyclone on coconut trees. So before you even go into our planting, our agriculture, our fishing, this, which provides food, provides nutrition, provides the leaves for our mats, for our weaving, our baskets, our roofs, everything. The coconut tree is for us the tree of life. The plasma from coconuts, or the coconut juice, has the same impact or same equivalent to the plasma in our blood, so that you can give a blood transfusion using coconut juice, using the liquid from the coconut, if blood is not available. This has been used in emergencies and civil wars and in other parts of the world. And so this is an example as to what is happening. The lifeblood of our people is being destroyed as a result of climate change. But I don't want to just talk about doom and gloom. I want to talk about resilience as well, because, frankly, we need to call out the bigger countries to increase their climate financing, to help us with loss and damage and all the technical aspects that you will be hearing from the COP language, from the climate justice perspective. But at the same time, we cannot sit back and wait. And indeed, in the Pacific, that is what we are doing. We are no longer sitting back and waiting. In the impact after Cyclone Yasa, severe tropical cyclone Yasa, which compounded the impact of COVID last year. So while we had lockdowns, while we have people unemployed and forced to move out of urban areas into the rural communities, they were affected across the region by severe tropical cyclone Yasa. What we did in response was to establish food banks across the region. These were set up in Tonga, in Fiji, in the Solomon Islands, in Vanuatu, both using material that was available or seed banks. So we would set up and germinate seeds in order to send them out to the community. So instead of waiting for disaster relief to come, we were already moving into the response and resilience phase afterwards, so that people would be guaranteed food and vegetables, fresh food, fresh vegetables, as soon as possible in the time after the disaster, and of course ongoing with COVID lockdown. So this was very important in terms of alleviation. This is our Garden of Justice and Peace. This garden was initiated when the Pilgrimage of Justice and Peace reference group visited Fiji as part of the Pacific focus, or the world focus on the Pacific, through the WCC's Pilgrimage of Justice and Peace. So we talk about justice from the situation of social justice in terms of food security, and peace in terms of holistic support for communities. So we turned this park into a food bank, into a plantation, and created an open space where those who needed it, particularly in urban areas where access to land for planting is limited, were able to come and take what they needed, either the food, the fruit of the garden in terms of the vegetables and the fruit that was harvested, or take cuttings to go and plant in their own spaces. And that was an opportunity then for people to have a sense of dignity, that they weren't just relying on handouts, that they too were able to do something with a little bit of help. What we are trying to do is move towards ecologically centered development models. The Pacific Conference of Churches has recently purchased 50 acres of land outside the capital city, where we are setting up an ecological model of farming and agriculture. So it's an eco farm, which aims to use indigenous knowledge and indigenous methods added to which we will bring modern science, but making it still organic, and ensuring that whatever planting is done in a way that is in harmony with the existing biodiversity. This creates more resilience in terms of the treatment of the land. It also ensures that crops are done in a more intercropping space where you find, we're not just clearing the land for wide-scale agricultural work. We are working within the spaces allocated. And this is within our Lolomana ni Navulangi, which translates as Love of the Stranger Eco Farm project, where we will plant short-term crops, as well as long-term crops, as well as continue to support the existing indigenous forest that is there and is producing, playing an important role in carbon sequestration and the production of oxygen. So finding ways where we are not destroying the green lungs of the earth, our forest spaces, while also being able to plant and provide for our communities. In our project, 10% of the land will be allocated to food that is going to be distributed to our communities and shared as well, with disadvantaged communities, those who are affected. We hope that this will be a model for our Pacific churches and for other churches that they can, engage in and support. And I think that's something that we can do in order to show what Pacific resilience looks like and the role of the church in supporting that resilience. We'll be setting up training centers in that land, and all of the facilities will be completely ecologically focused. So even our electricity, etc., will be off the grid, using solar, using natural sources for water, doing training on hydroponics, where we can engage with those from the low-lying coral atolls that would like to remain in their islands and maybe look at how salt water can then be changed into fresh water, those desalination techniques, and then how that can go into hydroponics as a way of providing fresh vegetables for our communities. But why is the church involved in all of this? Why are we not just sticking to our prophetic role or our pastoral role? And why are we also engaging in this very practical thing? Well, for us, it is about how we sing the Lord's song in strange times, in strange lands, or lands that have been made strange by climate change, and how we ensure that we are promoting in a very practical way, the words of Jesus, who came that we may have life and life in abundance. We can still not only survive, we can flourish if we work together on resilient methods, or methods that promote our Pacific or our community in resilience. And that is where churches and indigenous communities need to work together. We need to work with our development agencies to show that this is a good model of development. We don't have to rely only on models that come from the global north, that we too have models of resilience and models that can succeed in providing food security and addressing and mitigating the impacts of climate change, even while we were advocating for justice on the global level. So thank you very much for this opportunity, Manoj and the team, and may God's blessings be with you all. Please keep in your prayers those of us here in Glasgow. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this presentation, Reverend James. So we will give a chance for our speakers to address a 1 minute concluding remarks. And I invite, first of all, Jasmine to address us, her concluding remarks.
Thank you very much. And I would like to appreciate my fellow speakers, because it has been very interesting. And maybe to echo another speaker who was talking about agroecology, and that is one thing that here within the UNFCCC and from CAN Agriculture, we've been pushing a lot to try to get agroecology into the text of Coronivia, because we think that it is the best solution for most of agriculture problems. So I would like just to close with that and to say that it is still a negotiating text, but we have agroecology in between brackets to be negotiated in the next negotiation. So that is a big win, and we hope that it can stay on the text. So I hope that anybody who is following the Coronivia process can talk to the negotiators and to their country representatives, because we need agroecology on the text. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jasmine, and good luck for the next during the COP. Now I invite Aurélie to address 1 minute of concluding remarks.
So I don't have some remarks, but I just want to appreciate and keep up the good work. Okay, so I have a layer appreciation about the where is this? I am searching this. The PCC, I see. I bought the PCC, the garden, and also I bought the coral. What is this?
Cornevia?
So, Cornevia.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. But here is the. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we are hearing you. Yes.
Okay. So we also have an online campaign, same of the garden towards the quintet generation, and I appreciate very much these initiatives. So I think that's all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Aurelie. All right. So thank you so much for participating and attending the first part of the program. Now I give the floor to Dr. Manoj. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Siri, and really apologies that we went over the time. But I think it was quite important that that we hear these voices and not to cut it, because they were the voices of these challenges directly from the ground. And so I think to curate it was difficult. Now what we have left with is actually, so we have to cut down the breakout rooms. We had initially planned for a 50-minute time, but we'll have to reduce it to half an hour. But let us do that. And I'm just Sylvain, my colleague, who's intern with the WCC, will be posting the questions. Sylvain, can you? Yes, the questions that we will need for in these working groups. You will be divided into 7 working groups. So I have I've not asked all of you because Bishop Katone, Evangeline, Siri, Reverend Nikta, Reverend Judith, and Angelios, and Damon from Zambia. I'm requesting you to be the moderators. Okay, and then when you get together, please decide who can actually be a note taker. So it's important that we use the half an hour, and the moderators will make sure that everybody gets a chance. And this is the idea, because it is not we are not just listening to experts. We believe that expertise is with all of you. So please note down these questions, and then we come together back after half an hour. So I hope you have a good discussions.
We are back.
Thank you. So friends, I welcome you back, and I hand over the responsibility to our other moderator, Ecological. Ecological is a young person is a student, a master's student in the University of Cape Town. She has done her bachelor's, honors, etc., and she's authority and has done a lot of research on agriculture and financing. And we really are grateful for her leadership as one of the youth animators of the network of youth for life-giving food, agriculture, and fisheries. Over to you, Ecological.
Thank you, Dr. Manoj. I'm going to jump right into it. We're going to call the first group. So we'll go from group 1 to group 7. And please, when you're ready, speak, because I don't have the names of who will be contributing on the group's behalf. And I won't be able to see your raised hand. So could we have group 1 if you're ready, please?
We were 5 in the group 1, and we work on the questions, and our reporter is Aurelie. Aurelie, are you there? Can you report for the group 1? Aurelie? Hi, Aurelie, okay. If Aurelie is not there, I can try. The impact, it is, we have many impacts in our context, and it is practically the same in the deforestation, low food production, harvest is destroyed, and the destruction of environments. We have floods somewhere, and also the higher temperature and the rainfall. We have less rainfall. What is the adaptation taken by your community to overcome these challenges? It depends on the context. Somewhere the government make his politics, and also in the local communities. But we need to move together, and the church must involve for advocacy and action. We need to move together and involve in the action, not the government or political apart, but also the church members need to join the political group, the NGO, and the civil society to work together with them. That is in short what we are discussing in our groups. I don't know if Aurélie is there or Bishop from Uganda is there to add for what I am trying to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend.
I'm there, but I do feel that you have been a good moderator, but also a good rapporteur. I think in the interest of time, there's not much we need to add. You mentioned most of the issues that we raised in our group.
Thank you, Reverend Fidel. And in the interest of time, I like to ask each group following this one to keep the report back to 2 minutes so that we can hear from Professor Jesse Mugambi later. Group 2, are you ready with your feedback? We have Arthur Dahl reporting for Group 2. Thank you.
Well, we had examples of climate impacts in Uganda, in the Pacific, in India, in Bangladesh, with Kenya, growing Kenya, the Pastoral Society. It's the marginalized people what's at the bottom are the most impacted and have the least resilience. But also, it's not only climate change, but the new market system coming in and introduced varieties that are more susceptible to drought. It's imposing on them, and we felt it was important to try to go back to traditional varieties, to the staple crops that have always grown well and are more resilient to climate change than the new kinds of agriculture that are being brought in, but also helping poor people perhaps get other sources of income to compensate the losses in agriculture, learning to get another set of values, going away from the market system. Is it a market system, life or profit-centered or life-centered? And I think our faith traditions can bring us to that life-centered perspective, things that are more important than the market system, and can help people to find a better balance, a better sense of community working together in facing these problems, learning resilient practices, reclaiming the wisdom of the past of indigenous peoples, which is often going to survive better than the modern systems that have been imposed on too many of our communities around the world. So that's a brief summary of the very rich discussion from different parts of the world in our group. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. For Group 3, Dr. Erlinda.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
We're 5 in the group, but only 3 reported. We have 2 from Africa, from Madagascar, but he's stuck in the US, but he shared about Madagascar, and Father Joseph from Kenya, and then myself from the Philippines. So in Madagascar and in Kenya, the problem is no rain, drought. So the problem is also how to grow the food. So they have to get a container of water and then get a grain that is drought resistant, and to grow the food and then to distribute the food. So food is distributed, water is distributed. At the same time, there is also helping together in making sure that they develop organic agriculture rather than inorganic, which is more expensive. Now in the Philippines, we are visited by so much typhoon and storm surges, and therefore this has an impact on food production. Also because our forests have been denuded, we don't have enough carbon sink. So there is a responsibility to develop the forest so that we don't have soil erosion and eventually desertification. But we also have communities of faith, like among the Baptist churches, they have developed what they call food always in the home faith, food always in the home. Or even one of our former colleagues in the World Council of Churches, he passed away recently, Peps Kunanan, he has been advocating for the Bahay Kubo, the small hut. We have a song in the Philippines, small hut, where all the vegetables are planted. And you can even grow certain vegetable in fruit trees by using the vertical method of growing things. But one of the things that is important for us is working together with the Roman Catholic, because they have now what they call the Laudato Si, initiated by the Holy Father. And since we are part of the ecumenical movement, we have been invited. Pastor Al and I have been invited to be part of the Laudato Si. And we are now talking and focusing about Mother Earth. And we are also beginning to do theology of creation, not only thinking about human beings, but even the presence of animals and the trees and everything, because all of these are interconnected. And of course, the problem of COVID has affected also the food, because we cannot go out. We have the longest what they call this isolation or quarantine. It's only just recently that we are going out of our own homes. But anyway, we didn't have enough time to share. I'm sure there would have been many, but lack of time. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. It's very encouraging to hear the strides that have been taken everywhere, and people collaborating to act and advocate for more sustainable food systems and more sustainable ways of growing food and organically. Group 4, are you ready with your reporting and reporter?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Kat. Yes. Hi, this is Angelius Michael from India. I'm representing Group 4. We had very interesting discussion. We were 5 of us. Gat, who is originally from Finland, but now based in Germany. Then Masiva, originally from Zimbabwe, now based in Geneva. And Kat from South Africa, and Daniel from Vietnam, and myself from India. The first question, what is the impact of climate change on food security and livelihood? We had 2 stories, one from the Finnish context, and the second one is from the Zimbabwean context. The Finnish context, which gets shared, is that there are specific regions in Finland which are experiencing unseasonal drought or thunderstorm, heavy thunderstorm, which is not expected in a particular time of the year, but they're experiencing. And he was sharing of one very bad situation where a particular region was devastated because of the thunderstorm, and this is the result of climate change. He was also sharing about the situation of farming and farmers, how the traditional farming is lost these days, or is it's reducing actually, and we do not see the genetically produced food any longer, but the food, I mean, the organically food production is very less. But what we see is the genetically food production is growing up, which is actually a threat, and it is actually resulting into drought situation. The second experience is from Zimbabwe, when Masiva was sharing about his own context and how his forefather used to depend on agriculture, and they knew that once in 10 years they have drought in the country. But the frequency of drought has increased over the years. So it is no longer once in 10 years. If it is once in 10 years, they would prepare, in 9 years to store their food and food. But it is the frequency is more, and that is why they have to prepare now. In three years, they have to secure their food. And also, he was sharing about how they used to grow maize there, 30 times. Now it is only 5 times. So these are all impact of climate change on food and food security. Now the question of adaptation taken up by communities to overcome these challenges. How do we do that? One of the means to do this is what we see in Europe is the growing interest to buy biologically produced food. So there are shops where you can find, though they are not that cheap, they're expensive, but the interest among people is increasing, and that is a good sign. And this is also an adaptation measure to overcome the challenges. And what is the hope into future? I think we need to promote traditional grains which are nutritious and drought resistance. We need to promote this kind of food production in the coming years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Angelius, for group 4, and group 5 will be Judith.
Thank you, Kat.
Thank
Good
you,
day,
Judith.
everyone. Our group was quite diverse. We had people from different parts of the world. We had a good group of clergy, but we are thankful we also had a practitioner among us, a dairy farmer. We heard stories of while there are good food prices, we recognize that farmers are also experiencing the challenges. And some of the challenges mentioned were the fact that there are drier periods, particularly Jotham mentioned from Kenya that there is extensive drought in northern Kenya, and this is affecting directly lives and livelihood. We hear stories about increased temperatures, diseases, new crop diseases, changes in rain cycles that's affecting planting and reaping. And certainly one participant shared from Florida that citrus farming that takes place in Florida is being severely affected. We were only able to look at question 1 and 2 given the very limited time we had, sorry, 1 and 3. We thought it important to look at the whole matter of advocacy and how do we move forward. And we heard thoughts and sharing about community advocacy towards more budget for drought adapting crops, but also advocacy concerning conservation methods. Particularly in Jamaica, where I am located, we have initiatives geared towards eat what you grow and grow what you eat. And we feel that these are positive initiatives. Also, there needs to be training and encouragement and promotion in other kinds of farming methods that are more adaptable for times like these, including hydroponics, aquaponics, etc. I'm not sure if there is any word or two from my group members, but in essence, that formulates our discussions from group 5.
Thank you, Judith. Could we please have Sylvian? or John rather, John from group 6. Are you ready, group 6?
Yes, we are ready.
All right.
In the group we were the Anglican Church and the Organization of African Instituted Churches, and we recognize the impact or the effects of climate change. And the OIC uses a method of having farmer resource persons who reach to the lead farmers, and these lead farmers reach to the households who bear the greatest grant, maybe in terms of adaptation. Some of the strategies that have been employed are the use of agroforestry, that is the integration of working trees in farms. These are fruit trees, fodder trees, or firewood trees. And then also there's the issue of organic farming, generally improving soil health, because the improvement of soil health leads to better crops and better resilience of the farms. Then there's also the use of integrated pest management practices or organic pesticides, where there is the avoidance of using chemical pesticides. Then there is also the issue of preservation of indigenous seed, generally the use of community seed banks. These seeds, once the farmers have harvested, they use some, and some are kept in the seed bank. And then these ones are used at the appropriate time, so that there's the avoidance of buying seed. There's also the issue of integration of livestock and the crops, because there's a way the livestock assist the crops, and there's also the way the crops assist the livestock. And this one is a synergy that is working very well. There's also the issue of, because this is also all linked to the issue of ecological renewal. So we are finding that even at the community level, the involvement of youth and children at school level through 4K clubs and at households also is assisting, because this is the future generation which needs to start adapting the livelihoods to climate change. So they need to learn. They need to learn this. Lastly, there's the issue of community advocacy. The way I've heard somebody say that at the community level, there's the advocacy of making sure that we are doing the right practices in terms of farming and livelihoods, so that it does not affect the climate. I think briefly that is what we discussed. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And could we have Sylvian please report on behalf of Group 7?
Yes, hello. I can see we have a lot of similarity between our discussion. So I just add some key points. So firstly, we talk about obviously the impact of climate change on food security. So for example, in Madagascar, so they experience a rise of temperature with no rain, and people had some trouble to have access to food and also health. We talk also about deforestation in different countries because of mineral exploitation. It affects food because the price is more higher and the access is more harder. So we talk also about the business of charcoal. So in different countries, the charcoal is very important. There are not a lot of agriculture because people are more interested in charcoal because the business is more attractive. So, and then Klaus talk about Germany. The climate change starts to emerging, and we talk about the structure to provide food. We need to have better structure to provide food, indeed. So then we talk about some adaptation taken by communities to overcome the impacts. So the main thing, it was to help farmers who are affected by climate change and help people to grow their own food. We talk about the community garden in USA, for example, where people can have their own garden. We have also talked about small and personal initiative in Fribourg, in Germany, with strategy of green farming and put pressure on politics and need to create a new vision and get the church involved. So to conclude, we think we need to have more education in different countries because we think they don't have a lot of education about climate change and food security. So we think we have to encourage people to do agriculture, to speak with children, to know the impact of climate change, and we have to guarantee the security of animal and forests. So basically and globally, we want to put more advocacy about environment at local and national level. So it's good.
Thank you, Sylvian. We'll move on to the next part of this part 3. Thank you all for your feedback and your valuable insights from different contexts. We'd now like to hear from Prof. Mugambi, Prof. Jesse Mugambi. And I'll just briefly introduce him and then we'll hear from him. Prof. Jesse Mugambi has been a resource person for the WCC Working Group on Climate Change, and he has been a consultant on theology and ecology for the All Africa Conference of Churches, and he will focus in his presentation on the Green Anglicans program as a model worth considering in other churches globally. Professor Jesse Mugambi, could you please kindly give your valuable input on Christ's teachings that point towards taking personal responsibility and advocating for policy transformation in the domains of climate justice and food?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity to participate in this very important webinar. It demonstrates that it is possible to beat very many odds. It is possible now for many people to participate without having to struggle for visas and for air tickets and still be able to communicate globally. The input I would like to make is a brief one. I have been involved in this issue about ecology for practically all my life. I served for the WCC in Faith and Order, in Working Group on Climate Change, in Church and Society. And in all this, I have learned that we must learn to work with nature rather than against it. If we work with, if we work with nature, we survive. If we fight with nature, the risk of perishing is very high. In the Anglican Church, we have a decade strategy which begins in 2018 to 2027. And we emphasize what we call wholesome living. And ecology is one of those. I'm not sure that I can be able to screen the decade strategy, and I don't want to risk losing the screen by so doing. So after this, I'll ask Manoj and the others to share the decade strategy of the Anglican Church to summarize what we are trying to do. In summary, what we're trying to do is to suggest that ecology must not be taken in isolation. It is only part of the concerns of the human beings. together with the economy, together with all the other aspects of life. And when ecology is marginalized, the society suffers. If you go, when you go home, look up the Global Happiness Index, and you will notice that the countries that the highest percentage of forest cover, they also have the highest happiness index. So for us here in Kenya, especially in the Anglican Church and in our own home, we have decided that in as much as possible, we do not try to combat with nature, even if, for example, a seedling germinates in our compound or in the farm, that is a signal that nature wants to replenish itself. So we allow it to grow, and especially the indigenous ones. We also would like to rehabilitate the crops, the plants that became obsolete when hybrid seeds came. And we have found that those also are very good for our society and ourselves. In addition to serving the church, my wife and I belong to the Organic Farmers Association in one part of the suburbs of Nairobi. What we do is to commit ourselves as much as possible to live and farm organically. We have found this very helpful when we have food that has not used pesticides or chemical fertilizers, and which uses as much as possible seeds that are not hybrid. And we have found that this also has improved our welfare. So the message I would like to pass to all of us from the whole world is that if we work with nature, nature will cooperate. But if we fight with nature, thinking that we can conquer it, we shall perish. My final remark has to do with global warming. There is evidence, as indicated in the first presentation, that temperature is higher in this latest decade than at any other time in the history of planet Earth. This being the case, we notice that there's the sea level is rising, and the mountaintops are melting, with the consequence that the rivers are swelling and lakes are also having more water. It is very important that we be conscious about these changes, so that it becomes our responsibility globally to work with nature, not against nature. We shall not perish if we do that. But if we think that our science and our technology can fix nature, the consequence will be the opposite. I want to thank Manoj and all of you for this very important webinar, and I hope that there will be continuation. May God continue to bless each one of you and all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Jesse. I think if we don't remember anything else, we should remember what you just said, that if we work with nature, nature will cooperate. And if we work against it, we will perish. And I hope that remains in our minds and keeps us conscious of how urgent it is that we work with nature. Thank you so much to all our resource persons for contributing to our webinar today, and to each of you who contributed in the different breakout groups. Your inputs are valuable, and thank you so much. I'll give over to Dr. Manoj to close off, or to Joy Ava rather, to wrap up and close off.
I just would like to introduce Joy Eva. Joy Eva Bahul is leading the ecumenical youth accompaniment program, and actually is one of the collaborators of this youth initiative, the Youth for Life-Giving Agriculture, Food Agriculture and the Fisheries. And she is a very extremely dynamic person. We are grateful for her presence and leadership in the WCC. She is currently in Glasgow, but Thankfully, she has come back to her room. So I hand over to you, Joy, to give a little bit of a summary and also some perspectives, especially for the youth. And then I will just conclude with 1 minute. Handing over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Manoj, for this partnership and collaboration. Although Manoj has worked so hard with our partners and member churches, as well and ecumenical partners to make this webinar happen. So thank you so much, Manoj, for taking the lead. I wasn't able to join all the conversations because of also attending several sessions here in Glasgow for the climate conference here. But based on the reports, the sharing of the different groups, breakout rooms, and also by our last speaker, I would say, you know, like to share with you some of the things also we did here. This morning, there was a small group discussion about some of the reflections at COP26 by Interfaith group. And several people said that the word that they would affiliate based on their reflection of being here at COP26 is grief. They're grieving because of what the action. It's not we are demanding for action now, right? We heard it, we've seen it. Scientists and also many reports that we have seen and heard and read are saying that this is a life and death conference, because this is the time that we decide to take action and to really do as much as we can to save our planet so that we can have more years to come. And also because we owe the planet, this life right now, to the next generation as well. And so going back to that concept of grief, many people are indeed discouraged because there are no concrete steps, no concrete commitments. Not all countries commit to really decreasing our carbon emission and being more proactive about their commitment and being tangible with their commitment to climate justice. However, opposite to grief, several people also said that they are still very hopeful and that they are encouraged. I think one of the lessons I've seen and observed so far here in COP26, and also with the stories that you have shared, is that coming here is really being connecting, networking with as many people as you can, trying to see where we can collaborate together, whether it's through the different church traditions, ecumenical partners, interfaith, civil societies. We have to find ways to work together so that we can create concrete actions and concrete change in what is happening right now. It is discouraging when we see it that because like civil societies like us, we cannot go into that decision-making space, but we also have an influence when we work together as a movement, when we bring together our common agenda of saving the planet. And in the recent conversation this morning, we emphasize also the need for the need of the spiritual aspect, especially in calling out our leaders in the government as well, and those people, country representatives and parties at the COP, to really the spirituality, faith-based communities or faith communities are crucial in making this happen as well, because we remind them of the values and the morality that we have to look into, we have to really live into, because when we provide this morality and values where we see each other as part of the humanity, as as only a part of the entire creation. We talk about financial, we talk about all this, like multi-billionaires, like how do we save their souls? I mean, in the Christian perspective, right? To save their souls so that they will be able to see things differently, to redistribute richness, to redistribute resources, and to be a part of reparation towards a better towards a just and sustainable world. And so I really am encouraged to hear this the sharings from the different groups. Yes, there are challenges. The challenges will continue. We are working in a justice work, and so the work continues. At the same time, I hear stories of resilience and hope, and we are strong together if we this space, this platform, sharing tools, sharing good practices, is indeed a part of the solidarity and movement that we can do together to create an impact in communities and global solidarity. And that's what I observed here as well, that aside from grieving with our leaders making really not good decisions, is also this hope that we can influence these leaders. And so when we influence them in the negotiation part, how do we as people of faith bring in this the morality, the ethics, the values of our Christian faith, so that they will see this as part of really a moral responsibility of taking care of the others, taking care of our brothers and sisters, our siblings, not just human siblings, but creation siblings. And so I continue to encourage us to continue doing our good practices, share your tools, your tools with one another, and let's continue to create an impact. Again, let us not be discouraged, because justice work is indeed a very long time, lifetime, or even more work, but there is hope. And we hold on to that faith that God's Spirit is still moving, and God's Spirit is not just on standby. God's Spirit is moving through us to really create an impact through the different work that we do, whether in justice work, in advocacy, or even in your own communities, back in your home, in your congregations, and in your churches, and also in different communities you belong to. So thank you again for being in this space, and please let us pray for the COP26 as well, for the leaders to really put people first over profit, that we will be, that the decision makers will really prioritize the lives of the entire creation for the next hundreds of years, instead of being just short-sighted of the short-term goals. So let's pray for them at the same time that we advocate for real change and pressure governments and leaders to really do action-oriented plans and policies. God bless.
Thank you very much, Joy, for this concluding message. I have nothing to add, but I think let us join our hands virtually and say a concluding prayer. Loving Lord, thank you for this wonderful time together, for the lives of people who have shared their passions, their advocacy, for our colleagues who are, and our compatriots who are in Glasgow struggling, Lord, doing advocacy. Lord, we pray that you have called us to take your burden, because if we carry this burden individually, it is too heavy. But when, as you said, we share your burden, it's a shared burden. It is possible. When we share the burden for the whole world, for our relatives, human relatives, non-human relatives, living and non-living, the whole creation is your creation, and you care for it and you love it. You created it and you said that it is good. Let it remain good. Let us join our hands together and let us strive to make this work. But we can do it with your help. Thank you, Lord, for this time. Bless each and everyone who has come together and joined this this initiative. Let this continue and bless them as they go back to their context. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you, friends. Thank you very much. We have gone a few minutes overboard, 10 minutes, 8 minutes extra. Sorry for that, but we are really grateful on behalf of WCC and my colleagues. There are many people have worked here. The communications department, thanks especially to Walter and Marcelo, who have been working behind the scenes. And of course, all of you, my colleagues, Joy Eva, but also Hendrik, but also our young leaders, Catligo, Siri, and Sylvian. Thank you for your leadership. And also each and every person who has come, the resource persons, and all of you. Professor Jesse, thank you for your inspiration. And we remember what you have taught us through these years. And we want this initiative to join hands, both the young people and the mentors, seniors, because we know that you don't, as young people, you don't inherit the earth, but we, our generation, have borrowed it from you. We are borrowing it from you. And we have many leaders here across the faiths, not only and also recognizing our moderator and our leader of WCC, Dr. Agnes Abu. She's also here. We are encouraged that from the very top leadership of our WCC, they are here to join us. Thank you very much. And thank you each and every one of you, and God bless. And good evening, good day, good night.